everyone, I'm Shelley Correll. I am the Outreach and Membership Coordinator for the Arizona Historical Society, and it's my honor to welcome you guys here to our presentation, Women Who Brew with Megan Greenwood. And Megan, very special shout out to you. I'm the mother of 3 daughters, and I think it is rockin' awesome that you started a brewery, and we're gonna learn a lot more about that. But we're first gonna take a couple minutes and I'm gonna share with you a few things about the Arizona Historical Society. All right, so with me tonight is Mike Goodwin, our exhibits preparator. Shanna Fleischman, she's the one who's greeted you. She's our museum curator at the Arizona Heritage Center in Tempe, where the exhibit that features Megan is at. And finally, we've got Vanessa Fajardo, who is our museum exhibits preparator in Tucson. The Arizona Historical Society is old, folks. We've been around more than 150 years. And I always like to point out when I talk about the Historical Society, sure, we have museums, but we are at heart a group of people. And so we're a society, we're made up of people. So this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing as an Arizona Historical Society, is gathering together and talking about history. So next slide. It's so important that we've actually made it our mission here. Our mission is to connect people through the power of Arizona history. History anchors us, it grounds us, and it also helps us learn more about ourselves in the future. So it's super powerful. Next slide. A couple ways you guys can connect with us. We are absolutely thrilled to debut our brand new Arizona Historical Society license plate. This is a nice little fundraiser for us if you choose to put this on your vehicle. We do earn money for everyone who purchases this and displays it. You will note that our license plate has a monsoon storm. What does that have to do with Arizona history? 2 things. Monsoon storms are statewide. We are a statewide historical society. We're actually the only historical organization that is statewide. And also to remind you that Arizona history is powerful, just like those monsoon storms that just wreak havoc during the summertime. Next slide. Right now, we have only 2 of our museums open. There are flagship museums, the Arizona History Museum in Tucson and the Heritage Center, which you're going to hear more about in Tempe. And here's an insider tip, folks. These are huge museums. There's plenty of space to social distance. We invite you to come in. Masks are required, but we're a good place to be right now. While you're at those 2 museums, you can check out our 2 of our changing exhibits. In Tucson, we've got the Barry Goldwater K7 UGA exhibit. And what's unique about this, it's not about Barry's political life. We really get into the personal side of Barry Goldwater. You're going to learn about his ham radio operation, about the flights that he took over the Grand Canyon, about his photography. So it's a personal look at a really public man. Secondly, I'm not going to tell you too much about this because Shannon and Megan are getting into it, but at the Heritage Center, we've got our Still Marching from Suffrage to Me Too exhibit, and they'll chat more about that. So next up, we do have a number of virtual programs, and we like to say here at the Arizona Historical Society, we've got something for everyone. This just gives you a little glance at what we've got over the next couple of weeks. I do want to point out our next one is an Ask an Author program with Jason Hart. We have some incredible authors that contribute to our Journal of Arizona History. And every once in a while, we convince them to come on, get out of their writerly worlds and get on camera and chat with folks. So we're real excited about that Jason Hart conversation, which is going to discuss Arizona during the Cold War. All right, next. So I am the membership coordinator, and my job is to help members connect with history. And the membership gets you some basic things. You get free admission into all of our museums. You get discounts at our gift shops. You also get that quarterly journal, the Journal of Arizona History. And when you're a member, you are supporting Arizona history. You are actually helping us bring these programs free to folks. So thank you to our members who are here. And if you have any questions about membership, you can reach me in the chat. I mentioned that we have our Journal of Arizona History. This is the premier journal for history in Arizona. It comes out quarterly, and we just debuted a double issue with our past, this issue that just came out, which is a fantastic resource with basically state of the industry, what's going on in Arizona history. We're real proud of that. And again, it's only available to members only. And you can find out more about the Arizona Historical Society at our website, which is azhs.org. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shannon, who's got some questions for us. Shannon, is that right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to show a couple of photos before I turn it over to the question, because I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you'll get to see our talking faces. But just so you can see some photos of Megan in action, and we have her original white bottle, the OG bottle, the collector's edition featured too. So I just wanted to shout out those photos because it's awesome. And so I'm going to stop sharing. And Nessa, if you wouldn't mind doing the questions real quick before we get started.
All right, so I went ahead and shared them. So there's 2 questions there. Go ahead and answer it. I'll leave it open for about a minute and let us know what you think.
These questions connect to our Still Marching exhibit that Shelley was talking about, that's at our Arizona Heritage Center in Tempe. So hopefully if you have seen the exhibit, you'll get a couple of sneak peeks on the answers there.
Okay, about another 10 seconds before I close it. All right. And then I will go ahead and share the results. There we go. And then Shannon, can you see those or no? Okay. So for question 1, who was the first woman U.S. Supreme Court Justice? It was Sandra Day O'Connor. And then 2, who was the first woman governor of Arizona? It was Rose Mofford. So that was about 71% got that right for the second question. And then for question 1, 59% got it right.
Nice. So I'm proud of all of my Arizona historians on the chat. So this kind of relates, we asked questions for some first women in Arizona, which leads us to our guest of honor tonight, Megan Greenwood. So I'm going to do a little introduction for her, and then I'm going to ask her a question to get started. So Megan Greenwood is the owner of Greenwood Brewing, a woman-owned beer company in Phoenix, Arizona. She began Greenwood in 2017. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly enough, not her first job. She was an engineer and started home brewing out of her kitchen and then garage. And then, surprise, it was so popular. And now her beer is featured in over 70 restaurants and bars all over Arizona. And she's launched her own brewing company, which she's now sitting in front of. And so we all know, hopefully we're all beer drinkers on this chat. And so Greenwood was created to focus on the women in the beer industry. So focusing on women beer drinkers and women brewers. So Megan, I'm hoping that you can expand on that a little bit. When did you figure out the gap in women enjoying beer? Was it before you started brewing? Were you noticing as a home brewer? If you could just expand on like the women in brewing focus that Greenwood has.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Shannon, for the introduction. And so glad to see everybody. I have my participant list up here, so I see you all. Thanks for being here. So yeah, I guess when I was, this all started when I was, I think really when I was an engineer. And I think a lot of women find themselves in more male-dominated industries. And I was in a male-dominated industry in engineering. And then, so I was actually, as I was working as a salesperson, I was having really great conversations over craft beer with my customers. A lot of them were men. They were just other engineers and other purchasing people. And when I really wanted to have a good conversation, or like really honest conversation with them, we would always go to have beers. Plus I had 8 beers brewing in my garage at the time. So it was something that I really wanted to try anyway. But we would go and have a beer. And I always felt like when I was going to these locations that people would approach me and they would ask me what I would like, or they'd just assume that I wanted the fruit beer or something like that, which I do love my fruit beer. Don't get me wrong. We have some fruit beers here. But, you know, it's just kind of like this assumption that because I was a woman beer drinker, that was going to be what I wanted. And I didn't want the IPA, or I didn't want the, you know, the hazy or the double or whatever, or really one of my favorite beers, which is the Belgian Tripel, which is a very beery beer, if you like, you know what I mean. And so I felt really underrepresented in the beer industry. And so I felt like I needed to really see if this was just me, like, was I just feeling this way? And I was brewing, so I knew a lot. Not only was I drinking a good amount of beer, but I also knew a lot of about beer. And so I went and ran some data on women in beer, and I found that over half of women, like it was actually over 70% of women, felt underrepresented in the beer industry, and most likely they didn't feel represented, because beer is for everyone to enjoy. As we all know, there's no gender in beer, and but as somebody who kind of appreciates something different, there was hardly any women brewing it. And so I really wanted to dig into this. And so I started really going down this path of brewing, and found, like, just kept kind of getting this same this conversation kind of kept coming up, where women would just say the same thing to me that I was feeling. And so in 2017, we launched Greenwood Brewing, and really focusing on rebranding beer for women. And just because really also, if you Google search and look up images of women in beer, it's like the Bud Light girls and, you know, women in not very much clothing. And I'm like, this is not beer and women. This is not women in beer at all. This is not a good representation of who we are. But then you go to men in beer, and it's just everyday men just drinking a beer. And so it's like, you know, we just need a rebrand of beer for women in general. And, you know, a lot of women love beer. I mean, so I wanted to kind of focus on that as just as my goal is to just really give a representation of beer or women in this industry. And so I left my job and started Greenwood Brewing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So I think, Mike, you're up with the next question.
Yeah, so I know this is probably a question that or an answer that would change regularly, or is like asking someone to pick their favorite child, but I'm wondering what your favorite beer is to drink, and then if that's the same, that's your favorite to brew.
So I'm drinking my Luna Amber. So I don't know if anybody's tried it. If they have, raise their hand. I really love this beer, actually. If you haven't tried it, you have to come try it, because it's delicious. And it's something that is so funny and ironic, because a lot of, like, even in Arizona, I feel like Kilt Lifter became the most popular beer in Arizona. And so to make an amber beer that is made by women. So my whole staff is, we have men that work for us, and I love the men that work for us. So, like, we do not discriminate in terms of any gender that comes to work for us, but our head brewer is a woman, our head of sales and marketing is a woman. Obviously, I'm the owner, I'm a woman. And so we, to have this beer that is kind of traditionally a male beer, you know, ambers, I just think it's my dad's favorite beer. And so I feel like that's, like, probably the same thing for a lot of people. And so to have a beer that I just love, it's delicious, and it's called the Luna Amber. We were talking about the name. It's just kind of a fruity amber. It's not fruity, but it's more fruity. It's sweet. So I'm really loving this beer right now. So it changes all the time. But this is just really crisp, easy drinking, something that, if I'm not looking for something really hot, like bitter, it's it's the perfect go-to, and it's really smooth. So, but the Luna, I was telling the story about the Luna. So when we first opened, one of the first beers that we came out with was our oatmeal stout, and we opened in July. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but we opened on July 18th last year. So right in the middle of COVID, all the restaurants around us were closed. And we opened because I really had no other choice at that point but to open. And one of our first beers, because all of these people that came in, they were like, when are you going to burst out? When are you going to burst out? So one of the first beers we brewed was a stout, and it's an oatmeal stout, really crisp, easy drinking, a fantastic beer, actually. And people were drinking it in the middle of July, like just sitting outside in the 115-degree heat, drinking a stout. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna name this beer? We're brewing a winter beer, kind of what I kind of correlate with a winter beer in the middle of July. And so we called it Soul. So it's a soulful beer because you think like, oh, like I'm sitting by the fire and it's really cold outside, and I want a stout when I'm in that situation. And so it's soul for like your soul, but it's called Soul, SOL, for the sun. So we named it Soul because it was the middle of July and we're sitting out in the 115-degree weather drinking a stout. And so then we had that beer come out at the same time as our Amber, which is the Luna, and our Cielo Session IPA. And so we had a kind of a trifecta of beer. Our Cielo has a hop in it that's Celia, and it's kind of similar to Cielo. So a lot of my staff come from big Mexican families. I love the Mexican heritage in Arizona. I speak Spanish. I love the Spanish language. And so we have Sol, we have Luna for the moon, and then we have Cielo for the sky. So it's our trifecta. So long story short, Mike, my favorite beer right now is the Amber.
Nice. That Cielo is amazing too. That one and your hazy are just, oh my God. Yeah.
They are good. They're good beers. Yeah. If you like IPAs, the hazy and the Cielo are very tasty. Yeah. The Cielo is still on our experimental brew side. So we're still figuring it out, changing a few things here and there. But a lot of times we get people that are like, when is it going to be a flagship beer? I want it to be a flagship beer. So Mike's sitting in our tap room, as you can see behind him. So those are our first beers like we came out with when we first opened. Right when we opened is when we took that picture.
And is it Forward? Is that the hazy that I'm thinking of?
It's called Warrior.
Warrior, that's right.
Warrior Hazy. Yeah. And so we have a Forward IPA, which is it was kind of, we launched that on a lot of our beers actually came out around the election time. And we launched that in 2018 during election year as it was the second beer I ever made. And it's a true English style IPA. So it kind of tips the hat to your traditional style IPA, which is original, very malt forward. And so there was a lot of women running for election. We were like, the future's female, Forward IPA. And so that was our Forward IPA came from there. But then we also have on the other side, we have the hazy, which is our New England style. So we like to taste the two together because it's like the old style of IPA, that Forward IPA. And then you've got your newest style, your hazy, your New England, that just became a style in 2019. It just became a style of beer. I don't think it's going away though, because it's our best selling beers.
No kidding, huh? Yeah. All of them are so good. I mix them up sometimes because I like them all.
I know. I was gonna say my favorite that I tried last night was for sure the Forward, and now that like warms my heart with the message too. And so I'm like, yeah, I know I picked the right one for a woman-owned brewery, and the message, I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a very unique beer. People don't really make malty IPAs. And a little history for you. So the difference between an IPA and a pale ale. So our flagship beer is the Herstory. It's a pale ale. You'll see that the most when you're out and about. So if you're in Arizona, we have our beer in Tucson. So I know a few people are from Tucson. So we've got our beer in Tucson at a few locations. And so you'll see that pale ale, but the pale ale, or this is the history of pale ale and IPA. So it's an English pale ale, is an English beer traditionally. And when the British were colonizing India, they wanted their own ale in India. And so when they wanted to ship their ale over the sea and go to India, and they were finding that it was spoiling on the voyage. And so hops is a natural preserver of beer, and they realized that if they just added more hops into the beer, that it was going to preserve it naturally. So henceforth became the India Pale Ale, which we call IPA. I want some beer people to confirm that's the real story, because I've always heard that, but I don't think I've ever even looked it up that it was the actual story. So it's like a folklore tale from like one to the next. I've got another one which is really good, which I don't think is actually, it might or might not be real, but we tell it because it's a really cool one. So I'll hold on that one.
That's
I'm
awesome.
looking.
I was gonna say, Vanessa, you have the next question, but I'll take that as like fact as for the history of IPA. I really appreciate that. So that's the history of IPA according to Megan Greenwood, and I'm okay with that.
Thanks. Oh yeah, I'm looking at the comments.
Yeah, Mars in the chat has confirmed. Yeah.
I mean,
I was gonna say, I keep going back to that. There's so many good comments in there too.
Yeah.
Questions and everything.
Oh
So
gosh, so funny. I'm just looking at the how many pounds can you lift by yourself. Well, I'm sitting next to a big this is how we have to carry those bags, which are 50-pound, between 50 and 55-pound bags, up the stairs behind me. So if you can see the stairs. So at least that, because that's what we have to do for each brew day. It gets very sweaty.
I was gonna say, that's just a workout in its own. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next question I have is there anyone here in Arizona or elsewhere that inspired you or influenced you to kind of, quit your job and just start this and do this whole new thing?
So is there anything like specifically that inspired me, or a person, did you say? Sorry.
Person, anything really, just take it however you would like to answer that.
I feel like I've got a lot of inspiration over the course of the last 3 years when, like, I remember one time I was sitting, we were talking at a bookstore, and there was somebody who had written a book about Arizona beer. And every single person he talked about was a man, and every single, like, all the history started with men, and it was like not a single woman was talked about. And so I was just like, and I was actually giving a tasting. I'm not in the book. Greenwood Brewing's not in the book, but that's okay. It's no big deal. I was doing a tasting at this event, and I realized it was just like fueling me. It was just this like fire was burning inside me that was like, wait a second, but the first brewers were women ever, and so I'd say I'm not sure if I think this has kind of become to fuel me. As one was the Google search that really fueled me. It was like, what is this? Like, where did this all come from? Why is the only beer pictures of like Miller girls or Bud girls or whatever? And then it was like situations like this. I'm just thinking about this one situation because I was like, I remember calling my friend afterwards, like, I can't believe this happened. But because women, history, another history conversation here, but women traditionally were the makers of beer because they were the cooks. And so back in the day, ale was healthier for you than water because there was so much bacteria in water and you have to boil beer. So it was more sanitary. And so a lot of times women were the brewers. They were the first brewers because they were the cooks in the house, and they would prepare the meals. So they'd prepare the ale. And so this is the folklore. Not sure if it's real, but it's like one of my favorite stories about beer. But come like a couple thousand years, maybe 5, come like back to like English style beer. Women realized that if they could share, it takes a long time. Beer takes a long time. So brewing in my garage took 12 hours. It actually takes us the same amount of time to brew 10 barrels as it did to brew 1 barrel. It's probably the same if you brew 50 barrels. It's all the same. It's the same time to actually brew the beer, no matter what the size is. And it's like kind of like breaking bread. It's very time consuming. And so the women realized that if they shared the load with each other, one family could brew the beer, one family could make the bread, one family could, whatever the other food was. I'm just thinking beer and bread. That's all they ate and all they drank. Not true, but that's just what I'm thinking here. And so they'd share, and it would make it really easy. Well, then they realized that they could actually sell it. And so the women would go around and they would wear these at the markets, and they would wear these tall black hats because they were the brewers. And so they wear these big tall hats, and then you knew where the brewer was. And a lot of times, and then they had, you knew who the brewer was because there was a broom over her door. So you knew the brewer because of the broom, and then you would go find the brewer because she was wearing these really tall hats. And so where witches brew comes from is because these women with these tall hats would be literally stirring their cauldron of beer. And that's where we come to the witches brew, is actually beer. And so then after that, that's when there was a realization there's commerce for this ale and beer. And so that's where we introduced men to start making beer, was because it started to get into commerce and became businesses and yada, yada, yada. So but that's one of my favorite. I'm not sure if that's real. There's like old stories, and I've looked that one up, but that's one of my favorite beer folklores is that one. But so anyway, so I was I was telling this story because I was at this meeting, and we're doing the tasting, and I was like, women were the first brewers. Like, he introduced me. I was like, I just want to let everybody know, women were the first brewers. So we started this history. And just because like the beer in Arizona started with mostly men, I mean, still today. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there is a place for women in beer. And so I think that's where it inspires me, is just continuously realizing that it is a woman's place too. There's a lot of women, and so do a lot of industries. And I never realized that I loved beer until I received this homebrew kit for my birthday. And from my roommate that was like, hey, I think you'd like to brew beer. And it turns out I do love to brew beer, so I feel like if you don't grow up with something like that, like my head brewer, her brothers were brewers. And so if you don't grow up with it, you might not even know that you love something. And so it's like the fuel is kind of coming, and the inspiration comes from like, okay, women can be part of something that's non-traditional women occupations or careers or futures.
I love that.
I was at that talk, Megan, and I thought it was really interesting that he didn't mention women, but the two guests were you and the woman from Arizona Wilderness. So I'm glad you pointed that out right when you got up there.
Yes, I remember that too. And I was like, well, someone's got to tell the story.
And I'm glad it was you, because you're so engaging when you tell the story. I'm like, man, I want to be a witch who brews now.
I know. I love that. I think that's my favorite thing I've heard.
Yeah.
We talk about that all the time here. Like, we have to do it's like, we wanted to do it last year for Halloween and have like the witches brew, and everybody dresses up like a witch, and it's just like so much fun. We will do that once everything goes back to normal. We'll do that.
So that kind of leads into the next question too. With you have a postponed Halloween party. but you opened your brewery location in 2020, so in the middle of COVID. So thinking back over kind of, I guess it's not quite a year that you've been open in your location yet, but thinking back over the first like few months of your brewery being opened, what's your like best memory? What has been your most challenging? And is the challenge COVID, or can you talk a little bit more about opening too in times of COVID?
Yeah. So we opened on July 18th, which was actually the day after the Governor Ducey closed all the bars in Phoenix, in Arizona. So it was a very controversial time to be opening a business. But at that point, we had started construction in 2018. And so we were very far down this path of opening. And we were supposed to open on March 1st. If you've been in our tap room, and Mike's showing you right now what it looks like, it's adorable. If I do say so myself, but it's our interior designer was, I kind of stopped construction because I didn't feel like it was really showcasing our brand enough. And so at the beginning of February this year, I was like, I took a colleague of mine through the brewery, and I was like, is this going to be okay? Do you think this is going to people are even going to like this? Do you think it's going to be terrible? Like, what do you think? And she was like, you should love it. You should love this whole brewery. You should love the whole space. And so she's like, let me introduce you to an interior designer. So Mackenzie Collier Interiors is a designer in downtown Phoenix, and she's awesome. So we halted construction actually in the beginning of February, so we could get a completely new design for the space, and which pushed us from opening on March 1st to April 1st, which at the time I was devastated to miss March because it's the biggest month of the year in sales. It's the best month of the year for every all commerce in Arizona. And so I was so devastated. And in hindsight, it's so funny when you're like, and you think back, and you're like, gosh, I spent so much energy being so upset about that. And it was a gift, really, because we didn't open on March 1st. And so we didn't have all of the utilities on, and we didn't have all the overhead going, which would have crippled us as a business to have to close on March 15th. So luckily, thank God, we were supposed to open on April 1st. And then that 1 month of construction took until July 1st. So 3 or 4 months, because we could only have one crew in here at a time. And so it was like at the time when all the finishing touches were coming. So it was just, and by July 1, it was like, my loan had been closed a year by then. All my lease had been signed for 1.5 years. It was like everything, my credit cards were maxed at that point, that I was paying payroll out of my personal checking account that was dwindling. And so, I think that people underestimate, I think people kind of thought that oh, this is coming from this person is putting this money, all this together, and it's she must be so rich and she must have all this money and she must whatever, and it's all self-funded, and it took 3 years to get the money to actually build it. And so it was like, people were like, why would you open on July 18th? And it was like, there was no second option, because I had my brewer on staff, I had my salesperson on staff, and I didn't want to lay anyone off. And so we launched, and I'd say the most difficult time was right then. And it was just mostly because you're concerned about everybody's safety. And so you're not sleeping, so you're worried about everybody. And are they coming in? Are they having a good time? Are they being safe? Are they spreading apart? All of that, which we still are, we do it very well, I think, but everybody can improve, of course. But I would say that was really challenging because it was like, and then, you know, you walk into the worst possible time to open a brick and mortar ever. So like, it was like all of the challenges, the same situation, like all the challenges I thought I was going to have that I was so worried about were like, that's a breeze now compared to like life in COVID trying to open. And so it was, and really like hiring responsibly and not having to like overhire and then have to lay somebody off because we don't have the business. Like all of that was just stressful, really. And very challenging. So yeah, I'd say like a lot of the things that I have to say are all around COVID, because really beer is a gathering drink. We talk about the power of the purposeful pint, and it's because all of the, like I said before, all the conversations I was having were over craft beer, and that's the truth. Beer is a gathering drink. You go and you have beer with your friends. It's fun. It's a fun beverage. And right now we kind of have to take out some of that fun. You know, I feel like a lot of times you meet new people over beer, and that's kind of the fun. That's just like the engaging part. Like you go to Germany and you're sitting in a beer garden and you're at a long table and you meet all these people, you know, and that's kind of the experience we wanted to give to people. And it was just like, wipe that away and find a new experience. And I think we do offer a good experience to everybody. And it's all outside and it's beautiful, and we've got probably 75 seats outside that are all spread apart, and it's great for today, but it's really not what we were meaning to have. It was to have events and to have fun, like events where we bring in somebody and they teach you something and you get beer educated. You know, you're all sitting around having a beer and learning something. And so I'd say that was and it still is something like we're just starting to dabble back into. So I'd say that's probably the most challenging. But the best part, I mean, besides the beer, of course, is our people. Our people are awesome. If you've come in and you've met my staff, they're kick-ass, and they are all so nice and just make the experience so great for everyone and make my day better. And they're just like, this morning I had a meeting with a few of them, and they're just so charismatic and bubbly and witty, and just like, this is I forgot that this was going to be part of my job because I was one employee, one of one for 3 years. I'm like going out and brewing the beer and bottling the beer and kegging the beer and selling the beer, literally one of one. I used to deliver the beer myself. Thank God I don't do that anymore. That was kind of a mess, really. So kudos to everybody who delivers, because it was like I was delivering in like the back of my crossover. It was very, very, I'm glad we're past that point. But it was so, and that was for 3 years, it was like that. So I kind of forgot that I was going to have a team, and they were going to inspire me and motivate me and come up with new ideas and just make the day really fun. So that's my favorite part.
That's awesome. But yeah, I agree. A team makes everything better. And so when you have people around you that you really enjoy, because obviously you were talking about how long it takes to brew beer and the like really labor intensive process. So if you don't enjoy the people around you, then I believe that we can feel your love in the beer. So I think that that's a great kind of way to look at it, that the people are the peak of it.
Yeah.
So I know that Mike has another question when he's ready for you. Maybe. He might have just lost audio. Vanessa, do you want to ask your next question while we wait for Mike?
Sorry about that. I'm
There you
back. Sorry. I was wondering about what made you choose Roosevelt Row, if it was meeting Cindy and Greg, or what exactly made you land on that location, because it's such a great spot. And I know Cindy and Greg are awesome from working with them for years, but I didn't know if you met them and that's what made you decide on that or what.
Yeah. So I used to live 5 minutes walk away, and I'd walk down 5th Street, and I'd always just like, and it was like playful. I was living in an apartment and brewing at this point, I moved to downtown Phoenix. I actually fell in love with downtown Phoenix. I was brewing in my garage in Chandler. And I loved my house, but I decided that I loved the liveliness of downtown Phoenix and the culture and the community. And you don't get that really in very many places in Phoenix Metro. And so I put my house up on a vacation rental, and me and my friend moved to downtown. And so I was brewing at that point then back in my kitchen in my apartment, in my small apartment. And we'd walk down Fish Street and I'd just like play. I'd be like, this is where I'm going to build my brewery. And I'm going to brew right on Fish Street. But it was so impractical because if you go down Fish Street, it's all craftsman style houses. And so I was like, actually, this can probably never happen, but this is exactly where I want to put it. And oddly enough, like manifesting 101 here, I feel like, but I ended up meeting one of our first customers was Changing Hands Bookstore, which is First Draft Book Bar. And our beer was called Herstory. So to have Herstory in a bookstore was perfect, match made in heaven. And so they asked if they could put our beer on tap, which is the first time I ever had somebody call me to put the beer on. So I was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. And so I went and we did some tastings, and I met the owner of the bookstore, who's Cindy Dash, who Mike was talking about. And she was like, we have this location on Fifth Street and Roosevelt that's, we'd like to develop into a beer garden. Do you think you'd have any interest in that space? And I was like, only the exact place that I wanted to build a brewery every time I'd walk down that street. So it was like fate that we met. And so this space where I'm sitting was a parking lot where you would walk down, even now you walk down Roosevelt Street and you think this building was always here.
Right.
Which was purposeful, to make it that way. But you would walk past this lot and you never even realize it was a parking lot. I feel like you just walk past and you're like, oh, okay, there's the next building. And so we developed this land. And another reason though why I wanted to pick downtown is because I love that everyone kind of brings something new from their background to downtown. So like, we're a melting pot state. I know that like a lot of people come from a lot of other places. And I think that's what I love about Arizona. And downtown, everyone kind of brings their culture, and not just brings their culture, but then downtown kind of celebrates that culture. And so then on top of it, you have 6 million people coming to downtown from all over the country. And so it's like, you get to have this huge array of diversity coming. And so I really wanted to just capture that kind of that spirit of being able to have our location down here. So it's a lot of reasons, but it was unreal, to be honest, that this was where we ended up having it, because this is exactly where I would have imagined.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Greg and Cindy are so cool. And just as someone who's been a part of the art scene down there for 20 years, it's like the perfect addition at the perfect time. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So I wanted to ask, and I'm going to try and keep it as brief as possible because I want to leave the last 10 minutes or so for any questions that have come up in the chat. But I know it's beer week, and I was wondering if there's any special beers that you have or any special beers that are coming up that you can tell us about, maybe send to Tucson a little bit. So if you could tell us about that.
Okay. So it is beer week, and we kind of missed beer week because our specials are coming out next week, but I haven't announced them yet. But I think I might give you a little bit of, so we're not brewing something wildly different or anything. So I can't say we're doing something like that. Right now, we're really trying to elevate all of our existing beers. So we kind of like missed beer week, realizing like 2 weeks ago that it was going to be beer week and all of our fermenters are full. And so, but we are having a special next week, which is going to be a smoke and deal on all of our bottled beer. So stay tuned, because it will, right now, we have all of our beers $5.50 at the brewery. I want beer to be approachable. I want it to be at a price point where it's a no-brainer. That's how beer is supposed to be. It's, we get into like this $9 and $10 and $12 beer and like, wait, what happened to beer? This is not what beer is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an every person drink. And and so we have pretty inexpensive beer for being right on Roosevelt, and but our packaged products are expensive, and I know that, and it's because we are small batch, and every single bottle we make is hand bottled by our artists, really, that work for us. And so we are having a special on all of our packaged products so that everyone can have it, because I always want to have that mentality of just continuing that approachable mindset, where it's approachable beer. I like to make beer. We have a big beer. Our Belgian Tripel is big, so it's 9.2% ABV. It's delicious beer. But other than that, we really try to make beer that's not that you're going to be able to have another one, because it's within a good alcohol by volume, and it's not super bitter. It's not going to cause you to have a hot bomb and not be able to drink another one. It's just really approachable and delicious, of course, but approachable. And so I want to continue that, and I would love to be able to launch our beer at a price point where people can take it home and enjoy it with their friends and buy a 6-pack, and they're not, feeling like they just bought 5 beers at the brewery, but they're actually taking it home. So that is our surprise. I know it's not huge and grand, but
I love that. I'll put my order in with Mike and Shannon, and then just have them grab as many as they can for me. So it'll be great. And then someone put in the chat too that they're like, you didn't miss beer week. This year it is beer month, because time does not exist in 2020, nor does it exist in 2021. So you're good.
Yeah, exactly. We need a full month. Like, we're still healing from 2020, so we need a full month this month. Yeah, well, I guess that leads us into one of our questions too that we got from Instagram earlier. We had a question that was, have you ever brewed a saison and a sour? Because we know that like you have a pretty, like, I would say, clean flavor profile. And so those were kind of some of the other styles of beers that somebody asked if you had ever tried, or if you have on the horizon possibly.
Awesome question. So I'd say our most estery beer right now is for sure our Belgian Tripel. We don't actually, you're right, we don't make very much estery beer. So it's like, kind of like, I don't know how to explain esters very well. So if anybody else can explain it, but I almost call it like kind of feathery. It's like, also you have your clove, your banana, your kind of like just thick mouthfeel. And we don't really have very many of those on our menu. We do make a lot of really crisp beers. And that's just stylistically, I'd say it's my favorite styles are more of the crisp beers, but also it's my brewer's favorite styles. So we have brewed a saison, but we have not brewed a saison here. But that's a good one. We don't really get that question very often. The sours are interesting because sours are live yeast. Every yeast is live. They're all alive, but it's from the air. Technically, a wild is made with yeast from the air. And so a sour is normally, and it's more of a bacteria-based beer. And so when you're in a brewery, the last thing you want is bacteria in your brewery. And that's all in a sour. That's all a sour is, really. It's just like, and so you can infect your whole brewery if you don't properly maintain and kind of isolate your sour beers. And so we will have sours here. But right now we're just kind of getting a grasp of our existing system. And we want to make sure we've got a great hold on all of our cleaning process and our flow. So like you can see, it's kind of a dance behind me. It's like you've got this instrumentation and it's almost like playing a piano, it's like all of these pathways where we can put all the liquid, whatever we have from our closed loop system. And so it's just understanding our system fully is really what we want to wait for. So stay tuned. We will have a sour saison. Haven't even really thought about it on the horizon, but if that's what people want, we'll make it.
I love that. So we had a couple of questions that came in from the chat that I want to just pose to you so you don't have to read through. So Cindy asked, what was the transition process between home brewing to like brewing in a brick and mortar? And if you did brewing at a brick and mortar from home brewing to now, or if there was like, did you contract brew? Like kind of what was the process going from home to your brick and mortar?
Good question. Okay, so in Arizona, your license all stems around the fully built out brewery. So if you want to build a brewery and if you want to brew beer where you can sell it, your brewery has to be separated from your house. So you can't just brew out of your house and sell out of your house. So I had a lot of friends back then because we had to give away a lot of beer. You have to have it separated from your house, and it has to be a fully built out brewery before you can get your license. So in order to do that, it's really difficult to start your beer program without your brewery. And when I was going to build the brewery, I wanted to self-fund the whole project. And that doesn't mean that I had all the money myself. I needed to lend it. And so I first talked to a banker at the beginning of the year in 2017. And she was like, oh, that's so cute. You really want to start a brewery. That's adorable. Where's the beer? Like who has it on tap? Who are your customers? I didn't have any of that. And she was like, okay, go sell beer. Get a proof of concept, show me that people are buying it, and then we'll talk, then we'll talk about the lending process. And she didn't lend to me after that anyway, but because it's very hard to get a loan as a startup business. But I was like, oh, shoot, I have to have a proof of concept, of course. And so I figured out a way. I actually went to a Pink Boots Society meeting, which is a women's organization for women in the industry of beer. And I put Megan, at the time, my business name was Elegant Beer Drinker. Great brewery name. Just kidding, it's not. And so I put Megan with the Elegant Beer Drinker on my shirt. And I went and all my goal was to meet people, of course, but to find a brewery that had excess capacity, so that had open fermenters. So like that was my question to everybody: do you have open fermenters? Do you have open fermenters? And I found a brewery that did. And so I met with a couple of them. A lot of them did not want to entertain this idea, and one did, which took a huge risk on me as somebody who was homebrewing in my garage, who's never brewed on a commercial system, which are very expensive. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I actually operated as a DBA under their business. So Greenwood Brewing was under their business name, which was the only way really for me to be able to contract brew in Arizona. And so I would brew on their system with their head brewer. And we would brew my homebrew recipes, which tasted nothing like my actual homebrew recipes when we actually made them, which I didn't realize, but like scaling beer is very difficult to do. But that's kind of how it started. And so I started my first batch, I like bought the whole thing. So I worked in corporate America for like a full 2 years, and this was my side hustle. So I'd go to work, sell, come home, sell for like 2 full years, just trying to get this proof of concept. And so then finally I found a lender that was like, okay, cool, you've got your beer. And at the time it was 70. Now we're in more, which is yay. Like over 50 locations had our beer on tap before I even had a brewery, or even the talk of a brewery, which was just, it was awesome. And it was because I feel like I got those meetings because we had, because it was, I would reach out and I'd be like, hey, I just remember this was a PETA Jungle meeting. And I was like, hey, I know you don't know me, but I have this brewery. It's called Greenwood Brewing. And we'd love to set up a meeting and do a tasting. And they were like, oh yeah, we've got all of our menus built and we're good to go. And I was like, well, I'm a woman-owned brewing company and I brew the beer. And all the beer is brewed by women. And they were like, okay, we'll give you 10 minutes on Friday. And so it was like, I feel like because it was such a unique story, and none of the beer was brewed by women, like hardly any beer in Arizona is brewed by women. I wouldn't say hardly any, but probably less than 20%. And so it was a unique story. And so they're like, sure, okay. So I feel like that was a lot of the reason why we were able to get into so many places. And I'm a very persistent salesperson. So that was really what started it all. And so we contract brewed for 3 years up until June of last year. So a lot of our first beers that we had on tap for the first day, we actually had to contract brew so we could open with our own beer. And then now all of our beer is made here.
So we have 3 more questions. So just to give everybody a time frame, but so that actually leads us into our next question, which is, what do you think is the best piece of advice for women who want to open their own business like you did in a male-dominated society or like business?
In male-dominated industry, yeah. I would say my best piece of advice would be to start. So start talking about it with your friends, start talking about it with people who you trust. Get a domain name, start a website, go to the Pink Boots meeting and put your terrible business name on your name tag that it's going to be terrible, probably the first one. Just go with it, move on. Like, don't spend too much time on the details early on. Everybody loves a good rebrand. So I would say start making the moves, connecting, networking. The more you talk about it, the more it's going to happen. If you keep this, like, and people think that all the time, like, I've got this great idea, I need to hold it tight. And really that's actually opposite. It's, if you hold it tight, it doesn't grow. So you have to start speaking your idea into reality. And of course, like with the people you trust, I didn't tell my family this for a long time because they would have been like, oh, you're going to quit your very cush job where you don't even pay for gas to start a brewery where you're not going to make a paycheck for like at least 3 years. Like, what are you doing? So I didn't tell them because I knew that was going to be the response. I love them, but I knew that I needed to get this idea to people that I knew were going to help me grow it. And sometimes the people that you love the most want to protect you. So they're going to help, they're going to want you to, they're going to be like, no, stay here, stay in the comfort zone. But instead you need to, just start. So it's a start, make a list. When I started, I literally had 1 Post-it note a day, and that's what I did. 1 Post-it note a day. And for my business. And sometimes that was sending 1 email. Sometimes it was making my first cold call, but like sometimes it was this like really small. That's 365 more things that you're gonna do this year than you did last year. So that's what I would.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. Vanessa, you're up with the second to last question.
So I would like to ask, because obviously I'm not in Phoenix, I'm not in that area. As someone in Tucson, I would love to know, and I've gone a couple places, but I would love to know where, in Tucson or around Arizona, where can we get Greenwood beer if we're unable to drop into your amazing shop?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We're on at a lot of places all throughout Arizona. I'd say one that's kind of everywhere is we're on tap at Culinary Dropout, which is kind of in every major city. And that's in Tucson. We are on at like Tucson Hop Shop. We're on at the Whining Pig locations. We're on at places like Mountain Shadows Resort, to Hop Social. There's a whole array, which are going to be on our website eventually. That is my job, and I have not done it yet. But we are on at a really great amount of places that all throughout the valley. I'd say downtown, pretty much almost all locations around us. Tap.az, and Flag. No, I have not gone to Flagstaff yet. Excuse me. I know we need to get our beer and Flag. But we don't have our beer and Flag yet. Prescott, we have our beer at Park Plaza in Prescott, if anybody goes to Park Plaza, Deli and Liquor. But you got some good spots in Flag, just send them my way, we'll reach out.
So as a Prescottonian, born and raised in Prescott, I appreciate that you said it Prescott. But yeah, as we kind of like wrap up, one like really interesting and conversation that we've had going in the chat is they love the name, and obviously it's your last name. So if you could maybe go into like the just aesthetic. So how did you come up with land on the name? How did you I know that you talked a little bit about the interior design and your logo, because I think it really speaks to the kind of like welcoming environment that you've been talking about all night with like a woman-centered business and making people feel comfortable with drinking your beer. So if you wouldn't mind like kind of wrapping up with that kind of question.
Yeah, absolutely. So Greenwood is my last name. Something kind of fun is, so my mom actually, my mom owned a grocery store, actually owned my dad's family grocery store, which was kind of ironic that my mom ran it and owned it. And so it's called Greenwood's Grocery. It's a tiny town of like less than 2,000 people in rural Iowa. And my family kind of kept that name going. So now there's like a Greenwood Pharmacy, but they're all in these small towns in Iowa. And so I was like, okay, I wanted to continue our Greenwood name, at post Elegant Beer Drinker, because that was a close second. And I'm joking, that is not a close second, but the other thing that I loved about this was that I actually hired a marketing company that I loved. They're called Radiant Marketing out of Queen Creek. I love them. If you ever have a chance to meet them or use them, they were awesome. But they were like talking me into Greenwood. They just kept trying to talk me into Greenwood. And I was like, gosh, I just want to have a different name. One of the reasons why I loved it was because all of the big beer that we drink, mostly light when we drink it, and maybe like on a boat or somewhere where like you're concerned about your calories, our big beer companies, are all the last names of men. Schlitz, Pabst, Anheuser, Busch, Budweiser, Yingling, I think is last name. I'm not really sure. All those are Miller, Coors. They're all last names of men. So I was like, well, if we are successful in our venture of beer, the women rebrand of beer, having Greenwood as the last name is like the last name of a woman. And so it's just like, we'll just be up there with all the other men beers and it'll be fun. And so that's why I was like, cool, I love it, let's do it. It's also very representative of kind of the feel, the way that I wanted the space to feel, which is just warm. It's a descriptive name. So warm, kind of like welcoming. Greenwood means it's like the keeper of the forest, so it's like this kind of interactive experience. And then you've got so our logo is, it all comes back down to this power of the purposeful pint, which is purpose Pilsner, is what I think someone was drinking earlier. And we had I really believe that beer is fun, but it is also purposeful, and that you have good conversations over craft beer. And I wanted to be able to represent that. So if you look at our logo, which I don't know if you can see it on here, but it is an arrow. So it represents our brand pillars, which are empowerment, confidence, and inclusivity. And there's a person, a face in the logo, and I wanted it to represent the people that are enjoying the beer, and the people that are having these great conversations. And so I wanted a face to represent people, and then the arrow represents empowerment and confidence. And then it's also a G, if you can see that. I'm not sure if you can, I don't know. But so it's also a G, and for Greenwood. And so it was, our brand pillars really actually started our entire, it helped with the decision to start, because, confidence, it was like, okay, I've got to have my confidence to open the doors, because I know that I'm going to get a lot of backlash. Not everybody's comfortable. Not everybody's it's a very scary time. People are, concerned. And so it's like, okay, I've got to have confidence. Empowerment, I really, really try to foster that environment here within my staff. And then inclusivity was like the one that was just like, oh, this is a no-brainer. A lot of our decision making is based on our brand pillars. And a lot of the time it comes down to inclusivity. It always is like, okay, yeah, that's confident, that's empowering, but is it inclusive? And that is our one that always makes the decision for us. So when we were opening, we were like, okay, we're going to open inclusively. We're going to have a to-go area. So one thing that we did was we bought a bottling line right away so that we'd have to go. I didn't think I was going to be in package for a full year. So we developed our packaged products so people could buy to go. We had hand sanitizer at every location. We had a location for everyone outside or inside. It was just inclusive. It was considering everyone and everyone's definition of safe. And that was where it was just like, oh, this is a no-brainer, to open for each person to have the experience that they wanted. And I think that continues. We continue to evolve. I don't know. I feel like oh, the hand sanitizer. Yeah, the hand sanitizer does smell good. We're still evolving. Every person who we hire changes our story a little bit. Every beer we make, every person we engage with, and as we continue month by month, like the story is ever evolving. But that's kind of our foundation, and the environment that we want to foster here, and hopefully a gathering space too soon.
That's awesome. So we're kind of wrapping up for the evening. And so to everybody that's joined us, I just want to say thank you so much. And please, please go see Megan at her brewery from a distance, drink the beer. Like, you see how amazing and inspirational and just talented she is just talking to us. Wait until you taste the beer. It takes you to a next level. And I'm serious when I say that we can feel your love when we're drinking your beer. I really do feel like the connectivity. So please go see her at the brewery. And then if you would like to learn a little bit more too, she's featured in our Still Marching exhibit at the Arizona Heritage Center. But otherwise, message her on Instagram if you have other questions. Look out for other places that she's going to be expanding in the state. But thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we'll have this recording if you need to catch up on anything that you missed later this week. So thank you for everybody joining us.
Thanks, Megan. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers.